So what gives me hope is the tremendous progress in understanding the biology and the pathophysiology of multiple sclerosis, because only what you understand you can really fight. And therefore, with each insight, we come closer to approaches that could one day better protect the neurological function and the quality of life of the patients.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Dr. Hella Koloff, Chief Scientific Officer at Immunic. Hella, very good to speak with you as always. It's the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Why is this day an important moment to talk about Immunic's work in multiple sclerosis?
Thank you for having me, Steve. So when people are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I think the biggest fear for them is really losing their independence and ending up in a wheelchair. And indeed, losing their independence is unfortunately a consequence of ongoing underlying disability progression that is caused by the disease. And usually it affects young adults. So they get the diagnosis when they're quite young, when they're just starting their careers and education and founding families. So there's huge uncertainty that affects their future. And unfortunately, multiple sclerosis gradually takes away your ability. So, like what we take for granted, like walking, remembering, focusing on things, and managing everyday tasks. So, talking about our work at the Awareness Day really highlights that scientific and clinical research, so scientific research and clinical research aimed for the understanding the challenges they have. And that's a way to develop um, treatments that help the patients to maintain their independence for as long as possible.
So really, Hella, the long-term outlook in MS is really what deserves more focus.
Yes, that's absolutely true. So, multiple sclerosis is a chronic, lifelong autoimmune disease, which affects many different aspects of the patient's life. And I'm not talking just about years, I'm talking about decades. So, it's super important to understand the processes behind this progression to help to develop better treatment options. And with our lead compound, vidofludimus calcium, this really may help to protect the nerve cells in the brain and in the spinal cord. And vidofludimus calcium is able to protect the nerve cells' function as well. And the readouts we have from our clinical studies are very encouraging because we see signs to really reduce the nerve damage. And vidofludimus calcium can slow down this gradually worsening, even which happens even in the absence of relapses, because only 50% of the worsening in MS patients and even in RMS patients is based on the relapses. So the other thing is really underlying progression. And I personally see three treatment success levels. So one is delaying the progression, the other is halting the worsening, and even improving the abilities is an option as an outcome of a success level of a clinical study. And in our studies, we have, of course, seen delaying and halting progression over the treatment duration. And in some patients, we even saw improvement of abilities over time. And that's fantastic, I would say. So in addition to this, beside the clinical outcome, we measured biomarkers, tested them, and we observed positive signals that we really reduce nerve damage. And this shows the potential to protect the nerve cells. And looking at the long-term data we have from the clinical studies, and we even have treated patients for more than 5.5 years, we see consistent signs that vidofludimus calcium can reduce the risk of confirmed disability worsening over time. And this really reinforces the idea that vidofludimus calcium could address the underlying processes which drive the long-term disability in multiple sclerosis.
Hella, what could this focus on long-term progression mean for patients' everyday lives?
Well, a focus on long-term progression means looking beyond the immediate symptoms, which present as relapses. And it is super important to suppress the relapses. And uh, but that's just not enough, I would say. It's a good starting point, but we really need to go further for long-term disability. And if we can slow down or prevent long-term damage, this means that people with multiple sclerosis may be able to maintain the independence for much longer in their life. So like walking, working, learning, or just spending time with a family without the fear of gradually decline. And to focus on long-term progression means helping the patients to keep control over their lives and giving them more certainty for the future and the quality of life over years.
Looking ahead, Hella, what gives you hope for the future of MS research and treatment?
So what gives me hope is the tremendous progress in understanding the biology and the pathophysiology of multiple sclerosis, because only what you understand, you can really fight. And therefore, with each insight, we come closer to approaches that could one day better protect the neurological function and the quality of life of the patients. And with observing this Awareness Day, this reminds us why we work, why our work matters. And it's about giving people living with multiple sclerosis the possibility to maintain the independence and live fuller lives for as long as possible.
Hella, thanks always for your insights. It was good speaking with you today.
Thank you.
Dr. Hella Koloff, Chief Scientific Officer at Immunic.